Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and you have now come to the most powerful, most informative, and most educational platform, bar none, on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries. Once again, I'm your host, Rashid. I'm your friend and your brother. And I want to take the time out before we even start to thank you for giving me your time today, because today is Saturday. There's a lot of madness going on in the world, and most people are preoccupied with foolishness and madness to give a little time for sanity and truth. So from the bottom of my heart and the depth of my soul, I want to take the time out to thank you, every one of you, on each and every one of our platforms, be it Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, the Red Pill Journals, the Red Pill Diaries, any other places that we may be on. Thank you. My guy Joel Bradford is in the building. Salute. And look at this. Perseverance Chameleon. Hey, listen, he was me and Perseverance Chameleon. We were just chopping it up on the live stream. The channel member and the Patreon live stream just 10 minutes ago. I've done an hour and a half Patreon and channel member live stream. You guys got to check that out. We just got off that, so this show won't be as long today. I just wanted to talk to you all. I know that they're going to be messing with the show. I know that it's going to be freezing. I know that all of that stuff is going on. I know it, but hopefully we can continue to keep it pushing. All right. Let me put it up. My guy Joel, I got to put this up for a second, and I got to put this up. I thank each and every one of you for joining us. Now, the show, we just did this. This was an impromptu show. After doing an hour and a half stream for the channel members and the patrons, I wanted to show them my thankfulness for them supporting the channel financially. We're going to continue to do a lot of live streams this week and the weeks to follow. Now, the show is called Saturday Night Live. So let's get it. Let's get it, okay? So we're going to be talking about a little news. And, of course, I have to use my phone because my other computer is down, all right? So when you see me looking down, I'm looking down at one of my phones, okay? There's a lot in the news, a lot. And some of the things cannot be left unspoken. Some of the things cannot be left out there for in the wind, because there's too much riding on it. I was looking at the United States boastfulness about what they were going to do to China and all of this stuff, and how China better do this and China better do this. Once again, I want to direct your attention to this. Why is it that America feels, and why is it that the UK feels, and why is it that NATO feels that they can arm whomsoever they choose? They can give military dual-use components and chips to anybody they choose, so long as they deem them in their national interest and their strategic partners. But they feel that China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, Chad, Burkina Faso, and all of these other nations can't do it. That comes from an exceptional racist mind state. I do as I say and not as I do. Now, America and NATO continues to publicly say how they're sending weapons to Ukraine. They're even now about to send F-16s to Ukraine. But Blinken wants to go to China to demand of China what America would not do. I want you to think about that. To demand of China what America would not do. Is that not arrogant and racist? China, your national interest and your sovereignty doesn't matter, because you are a friend to a person that we deem an enemy, and you're helping them out. But hold on, let's use that same logic. What if China used that and say, hey, you are helping people that we deem are enemies? And it's against our national interests. How would the West respond? You know how they would respond? The way they're responding right now: belligerent, arrogant, and full of imperial hubris. You want to stop China from helping Russia. Man, this is absolutely insane. Let me try to find this article real quick. So let me go here real quick. This is an article on Sputnik News, okay? It is titled "A Bluff. U.S. tries to cut ties between China and Russia, spearhead economic decisions for China." Now, I have not read this. I just saw that. Like I say, I do a lot of this spontaneously. All right, right in the moment. Okay, so we're going to address this article in just a second. But before we address this article, let's lay the base and look at it rationally. Because what we see from America and what we hear from America in the West is irrationality. They're not rational. They're not sane in their thinking, right? What they are is enraged that they are losing the great game. So listen, China, again, I'm going to point these points out. I have to point them out because they continue to drop articles like this. China is America's largest trade partner. She's America's largest investor. She holds between $700 billion and $1.5 trillion in U.S. debt, right? China supplies 93 to 95% of all goods on U.S. store shelves, right? We know that. These are facts. These are admitted by the U.S. government, right? Now, how in the hell you being so dependent on China, especially with the critical supplies, rare earths and all of this stuff, how can you go and demand of China what you wouldn't do for yourself? How can you start threatening your finances? If you don't act according to what I say, I'm going to sanction you. Are those thoughts and moves of rational people, rational leaders, rational governments to antagonize and then provoke the very nation that you rely on for its gratuity to buy your debt to keep your budget afloat? Common sense tells us that is irrational and unsound judgment and policy, right? Rashid doesn't have to tell you that. Common sense tells you that. Okay, let's read the article a little bit. It says Xi, and it's talking about Xi Jinping, the president of China. Xi said the two countries should be partners rather than adversaries, and recognized this year as the 45th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the U.S. and China. Xi added that the world is big enough to accommodate the simultaneous development and prosperity of both China and the U.S. Xi, you're wrong on that one. And I'm going to tell you why. Because America, in her eyes, the UK in her eyes, they have this thing where you can't be an equal partner. For if you are an equal partner and you are equally prosperous and you have the equal capacity militarily, economically, then we can't subject you or subjugate you to our will and to our way of doing things. And with the mind state of the people in the West, especially America, this is a no-no. There's no room for equality. There's no room for two superpowers. There's no room for three superpowers. There's only room for the hegemon and everybody below it. And once people start realizing this, then they can really start analyzing the moves that they need to make to confront the hegemon. All right, shout out to Southside Mike. Shout out to you too. Let's see what you say too. Hello, Rashid. Z is pronounced she. Well, one of my Chinese friends said Xi. And so I say Xi. Okay. She, Xi. I can be wrong on that, okay? But I just used it as a pronunciation that the Chinese friend told me. Xi. Like when we have Carl Zah on the program, I said it's pronounced Ja. He said yes, but in English we're just gonna say Zah. So that's why you hear me say that. Okay, all right. So let's go a little further. I appreciate that though, Southside. I appreciate that. Everybody can be corrected. I take no offense to that. As a matter of fact, thank you. Let's go further. The article says on Friday, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The meeting came after a 3-day visit to China that was reportedly hijacked by contentious issues between the two countries, with China even warning Blinken of a downward spiral in their relation. Blinken also said that the U.S. did not aim to hold China's development or separate the world's two largest economies. See the lies? Now, they go to China and tell them what they're not trying to do. All the while, every movement shows you that the things that they are in denial about are the things that they're trying to establish. That is the telltale sign of a liar. And my grandfather, rest, God bless the dead, my grandfather used to say, if they'll lie, they'll steal. So we know that the U.S. have no compunctions about lying. That's why when we look at where they are, they're everywhere stealing the resources of everybody else, because a lie is a short step from stealing. You understand? So, again, okay, Southside might put something in there. It says, Rashid, I would love to hear your opinion on how America inflames anti-Chinese and anti-Asian racism among the African-American population by portraying all Asians as anti-black. You know what? I'm glad he said touchy subject. It's not too touchy for me. I'll talk on it. Okay? I'm glad you brought that up. And Southside, as a matter of fact, I was supposed to talk about that on the premium stream that I just did, but I ran out of time. So I'm glad you brought that up. In Africa, some Chinese businesses have been shut down due to the fact that they would not serve the population of those countries. They would only serve Chinese. And this was a no-no in those African countries. And the U.S. took this, right? And they blew this up. Now listen, is there racism? Yes, there is, right? But we have to understand. And this is what I try to tell people, because the United States love to use this to divide, okay? So I want you to just bear with me. Sometimes I might go on a tangent, but just listen. Just bear with you, brother, for a minute. The Chinese have been deprived of fellowship with black people around the world for a long time, just as if blacks were deprived of fellowship with Chinese. So, of course, there's some ingrained racism in some of them. There is, right? There is. There is racism, and to be honest with you, the most the people who feel the most racism in reality around the globe are black people. That is not because I'm black. I'm just telling you the reality. If you look at Africa and you look at who dominates Africa, you see lighter people, or you see people who are subject to Western corporations. Like, look at South Africa, and this goes, just bear with me for a second. In South Africa, when apartheid failed, the world thought that we were transitioning to something new, right? But then, and you see the governments. That's right, President. I'm gonna talk about that. That's why I'm trying to build up the thing, and I'll highlight you in just a second. Everybody thought the sovereignty of South Africa returned to black people once the ANC or everybody else took over and Mandela was put in power. First of all, I want to tell you this, and this is no knock to Mandela. Mandela wasn't the warrior that everybody thought. It was Winnie. Winnie was the one out there fighting and dying and taking on those people. It was Winnie. Mandela had been locked up for decades. You understand? But they overlooked her because she was a woman. That's sexist. But let's look at something. I'm bringing this up. So, as the government's transition from a mostly white rule to a black rule, everybody thought that was the end of apartheid. But that was just the face of Western hegemony. Listen to me, guys. Listen to what I just said. That was just a face or facade of Western hegemony. What they wanted to do was fool you. Because the people who still held the reins of farming, the people who still held the reins of banking, and the economic levels of power were not black. So there was racism, and it was backed by the United States. Did you know that the United States, up until the release of Nelson Mandela, had him designated as a terrorist? Did you know that? While America keeps talking about how much they love Mandela, do you know they had him designated as a terrorist? All this going back to the Chinese, okay? Listen, when you have not been exposed to different cultures, it is natural for one to hold back. It is natural for people to have suspicion. That's why I got in trouble when I said something about the Hungarian prime minister, Orban, because he was catching a lot of flack because he said he wanted to keep his country European and Christian. And I said, when people thought I was going to jump, I think he has the right to do that. And people took, and they got mad at me for saying that. But I had it with a little side note that if that is the case, then why didn't America and the UK feel the same way when Robert Mugabe wanted to do the same thing with Zimbabwe? I have no problem with what Orban said, because Hungary was a mostly white, mostly Christian country, and it is his right to do that. I just said that the Western world should not have done and demonized Mugabe for wanting to turn Zimbabwe back to a mostly black nation. What's good for the Ghana, what's good over here should be good over here. But what the West did to show you their arrogance, what they did, they used the media to demonize Mugabe the same way they're using against China. Okay. And at the time, people think that Mugabe ran the government into the ground. And that is not the case. Before he demanded the return of stolen lands, listen to me good, because this talks about culture. We got to deal with culture. All right. And when we deal with culture and we deal with the reality, we can then put away stuff that like kind of makes you fearful of that person or that person. Okay. So listen, go do your research. If you think I'm lying about this, just Google this. Before they sanctioned Zimbabwe for the policies that were being talked about and about to be instituted by the government of Robert Mugabe, God bless the dead, the Zimbabwean dollar was on par, was equal to, at the time, the US dollar. When Mugabe said it is not enough for the government to be black, those lands that were stolen had to be returned to the rightful owners. And we want to control the food, because if we don't control the food, no matter what we do, you'll have us hostage. We want to print our own currency, because if we allow you to print our currency, we'll be held hostage. So when he started enacting those things, they vilified him, they demonized him, right? And they made him an outcast. So when white society saw him, they saw him as a predator. They saw him as a ignorant leader that could not govern his country. That's what they're doing with the Chinese in these little skirmishes that happen with a racist person here or a person that is not knowledgeable over here. Okay? And then they want to take these little things here and magnify it and impose it upon the entirety of China. The same as they did with Mugabe. So specifically, listen to me good, specifically the United States and the UK went to work to overthrow Mugabe because he wanted to not just have a look of black governance over a black nation. He wanted to hold all of the levels of power, and he wanted to put the land back into the hands of the people. So the United States and UK went to work and sanctioned him, where they couldn't get fertilizer, they couldn't get all this. So the farms that those same people who were farming it under white rule, when they took over it, they could not bring about the same results, because the US and the UK embargoed them, where they could not receive the same things that they were receiving before, so that they could decapitate the Zimbabwean economy. What I'm trying to show you is this: when the West wants to vilify, they go use that media, and they will ignore over here, and then they'll magnify something this big. So are there racist Chinese? Heck yeah. But we're talking about the whole of China. All right? You go anywhere, you'll find somebody that doesn't like this person or that person, and you'll find crazy stuff over here and crazy stuff over there. All right? But what I'm saying to you is all of that is a byproduct of colonialism. I want you to think about this. This goes hand in hand since I'm talking about this. It was Britain that colonized Zimbabwe. They called it Rhodesia, committed mass murder in Rhodesia. They empowered those people who were there. And I want you to think about how unjust this was. The white society that are descendants from colonial days comprised 3 to 5% of the population of Zimbabwe. Yet they controlled 95% of the farmland, the fertile land, and the economy. How is that right? How is that just when you're not an indigenous person from that land? How is that? And then when you have a leader who stood on his square and say, listen, this is not right. I'm going to correct the wrong. I'm not going to take the land from you. What I'm going to do is offer a buyback. You took it from them, but I'm not going to do what you did. I'm going to at least offer you compensation, and then we'll transfer it back to the people who it belonged to before you came and took it. This was an outrage in the capital of London in the US. And they went to work to overthrow and destroy Mugabe and Zimbabwe. And yet they said nothing about what Orban said. And I have no problem with what Orban. I actually thought he was in the right in saying what he said. But I wanted to show you how when the West benefits, or when the West says you're allied, they push that to the side. But when you are doing something that they don't want you to do, you become a dictator, a tyrant, and you are running your country in the ground. That's crazy, right? So what they want to do, they want to make a culture war, a race war, because they're losing the economic, the political, and the geopolitical war. And think about this. Why would they magnify what was going on in Africa between a few Chinese companies? Restaurants or businesses at this time? It is because they are losing ground to both Russia and China across Africa. Do you know China became the world's workshop, okay? Because the United States needed some way for other nations to recycle dollars and have cheap production costs, right? All right, now we see that China is doing the exact same thing in Africa. China may be the workshop for the world, but you can go back to my shows with Carl Czar, he even admitted it. But Africa has now become the workshop for China. Africa is doing what China was doing in its infancy as it became an economic and political juggernaut. And so America, this is a no-no, because the Western world looks at Africa as their property. That's why Joseph Borrell said this to Sergei Lavrov: get out of our Africa. If you think I'm lying, Google it. Mr. Racism himself, Mr. Garden, told the foreign minister of the Russian Federation to get out of Africa as if he owned Africa. This is our Africa. Oh, you own Africa. What about the indigenous people that live there? And who are you to tell somebody to get out of somebody else's house? That would be like me going to Medi's house and telling Medi, or telling Medi's cousin, get out of my house. But Medi has paid the mortgage. That is the same thing. So what they're trying to do is cause a race and class warfare by magnifying and then metastasizing those little skirmishes right there. And it's all for the benefit of the West, because they're losing everywhere, specifically and especially Africa. And Africa has been the golden calf to Europe and America. It has been the mammary gland, especially to Europe, because Europe has little to no resources. And if they can keep Africa under boot, then Europe can extract the unlimited resources there. Unlimited resources there. At pennies on the dollar and sometimes without paying for it. That's what this is about. So when we look at the situation with the Chinese, yeah, if you go to America, you see some of the Korean people racist against black people. You see it. I witnessed that a lot, you know. But I don't put that as a whole. I know how to compartmentalize certain things. I know how to analyze things. And this is the problem with most people. They don't know how to analyze. And if you see this happening here, you associate it with everything, right? But that's because the West wants to cause a wedge or a divide between an economically important part of the world, which is Africa, listen to what I'm saying. Russia has so many resources, right? Latin America has so many resources, but according to a study done, the continent of Africa is the only continent that has every resources that you have, every commodity in unlimited supplies. You don't think America and Europe are after that? You don't think that they feel some type of way because China and Russia are making inroads in Africa without exploitation? You don't, because remember how America maintains power is through divide and conquer and exploitation. Didn't Sergei Lavrov tell you that? And it's the elite. Check this out. If you look at America today, the propaganda machines of Fox News, I call it Fix News, and all of these other organizations, not only do they have black and white at each other, they have white and white at each other. Black and black against each other, because it is beneficial for them to cause these divides so that they can maintain their power and their rule. Because if you're divided, if you don't have a unified front, a unified stand, you can't challenge their power. They'll dismiss your crying and your pleading for a change of governance and a change of rulership. That's all that's going on the major scale, you know. So let's see something in the chat. Hold on one second, everybody. I'm having today my throat is really acting up. Let's see. Medi. Now you know I have to highlight this quote. So Medi puts up here: you cannot export democracy with a gun. It is not true democracy. It is a thuggish, fascist, bureaucratic dictatorship. Boom, mic drop moment. Listen to me good. This is something that I say often when concerning what America, because America's always talking about our values. The European Union is always talking about our values, and we want to promote democracy. Well, what if the other people don't want your democracy? Listen to this. I gave this as a similar example of this maybe about 10 shows back. Now, say for instance, Medi, Southside Mike, and Perseverance Chameleon were in need of finances, right? And they were struggling. And I am successful in what I do, right? And I go to those three and I leave money on their porch after talking to them. Do you think that I have to hold a gun to somebody's head to force them to pick the money up that they're in need of after I'm talking to them and telling you, hey, this is beneficial. Look at what it's done. I'm giving you this so that you can do what you've got to do and pay off your debt. Do you believe that I would have to hold a gun to somebody to pick up $100,000 off their front porch? No. Why? Because it has become beneficial to them, and they see, hey, this guy gave me knowledge and then he gave me the backing behind it. Now I can implement what he said, and maybe I can grow this money so that I don't never have to deal with anybody else or have to beg anybody else or need anybody else financially. So this is what America says to you. This is what the UK and Europe says to you. I'm going to export democracy. Then if you don't accept their democracy or their brand of democracy, they call you a dictator, a tyrant, a thug, right? And they no longer call your government. See, they delegitimize your government by the use of words. It's no longer the government of Vladimir Putin. It's the regime of Putin. Putin's regime, Saddam's regime, Assad's regime, X's regime, right? The way they put words and they use them over, what they do, they use wordplay. And you don't realize, following up that wordplay, they delegitimize the rightful governments and the people that support them. So what America does, when she does that, she'll say, this regime, so we're going to go give them democracy through the barrel of the gun. Now, all you have to do is step back for a minute and think about this. If America's democracy is so great, if Europe's democracy is so great, I might add, with unelected officials in the EU Parliament, the president of the EU, what is it? The foreign minister of the EU, are unelected officials, I might add, screaming about democracy, right? Now, if their brand of democracy is so great, all you have to do is step back and let the world see, and they'll see the prosperity, they'll see the greatness, they'll see whatever it brings. You won't have to force them, because they'll see that it is beneficial for them to enact those policies to get those results. But instead, America uses the military to impose what she says is great governance and democracy on people. It seems to me that you don't have confidence. If you have to resort to the gun, to the tank, to the warplane, to impose your brand of governance on other people, then your governance is not all that good. Common sense tells you that, right? But common sense is not so common today, right? So let's go in here. It says, that's what Southside Mike, what you just said about IMO and your comment there, that's what I was explaining. Okay, so let's see. Ahmed says, let's talk about the USSR. Let's put this up. Let's talk about the USSR. After World War II, Russia had to quickly rebuild their nation that just lost 20 plus million people. Yes, some people say 30 million. Cities are destroyed, and they did it under constant US, UN sanctions. Amen. And then you wonder why people are suspicious of your policies. You know, going through all of this. This is what I'm saying. It's one thing, this is how you can tell if this is the true nature of a person. If a person is constantly being picked up for stealing and they get picked up again, it was no accident. This is in them. If a person rapes a person and then, oh, I'm sorry, I raped them, I must own up to it and I must go to jail, and they get out and they rape another person, and then they rape another person, right? Then you can judge best their nature and what they have on their mind and what occupies their thinking, and you can deal with them in that way. That's a rapist over there. Let me stay for more. I might have to kill that rapist. I might have to do something to that rapist over there because I got children over here. See, when you understand the nature of a thing, it prepares you to deal with that thing. But ignoring the nature of it, America continues to wage war, and then this is what happens: they'll lie to wage the war. And after the war is over, in fact, the media start leaking facts afterwards, not during and not before. The media starts leaking facts afterwards. The government laughs about it and says, yeah, we got it wrong there. Oh, yeah, we did. And at the presidential dinners, they'll make jokes about it. And tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives, and the nation lost its sovereignty. And it's hard to build back after that. This is what I'm saying. This is a pattern here. If you knit, crochet, or whatever, and you want to make a blanket, you need a pattern, right? If you want to make a pillowcase, you need a pattern. That pattern shows you how to go from here to here. Well, we understand that America has a pattern. If you don't bow to her dictates, she threatens you. She threatens you. She vilifies you. She tries to delegitimize you. She tries to bribe you. She'll try to take you out through assassination or color revolution. And then when none of that stuff works, you become a dictator and you are trying to exterminate your own people. Therefore, we must act to save those people. And then you wind up going into bumming the hell out of the people, killing 30 times more people than you claimed that they were about to kill. But you justify that on the back of humanitarian intervention and democracy. Man, get out of here with that foolishness. Absolutely insane. Yeah, let's see. Southside Mike says this. I'm glad. See, I don't run from questions. I'm gonna put that up there, and then I'm gonna put your other one up there behind that, okay? And I'm gonna address it. All right. Can we talk about how racist blacks are towards Koreans and Chinese and other Asians in America? Leaving international politics aside, I personally feel like blacks can't pass up the chance to racially bully. Let's answer that first. Now, I didn't mean to click that off. Let me click that back up there. We'll leave that up there. Can we talk about how racist blacks? First of all, listen. Blacks have been at the bottom end of everything in America. There's no people in America or no people in the world that has ever endured 400 years of slavery. Nobody in the histories of the world. Nobody that have endured. And I talked about this on my last show, just go to the Library of Congress. The inhumane treatment, the environment. Remember that science has just come out a few years ago bearing witness that your environment shapes your composition just as much as your DNA. We know that there was a program during slavery to keep blacks suppressed. We know that right before as a matter of fact, I was reading this to my mother yesterday off the Library of Congress about how Abraham Lincoln, the one that everybody look up to. I'm going to address all this, but I have to bring all this stuff up. How Abraham Lincoln said that the reason that he freed the slaves is to try to keep the Union together. But if he could have kept them in slaves and freed the Union, that's what he would have done. That's what he would have done. So in that Virginia House of Delegates and all of the capitals around the United States, they came up with a plan. This is not Rashid talking. I know this is harsh for some people to understand, but this is in the Library of Congress. This is not me. So I want you all not to be mad at me. And if you do, I flip and don't care, because I'm going to tell you the truth regardless. And like I said, I don't run from issues. I don't run from questions. I'm good. I can stand on my own 2 feet and talk about this and give you an in-depth analysis of what's going on because I do my study. Okay? So there was a plan by the government to stop slavery, but they wanted the slaves to be permanent slaves. So they deprived them of the knowledge of how to go for self. So when they freed the slaves without land. When they freed the slaves, they enacted all kinds of laws that suppress economic development, right? Now, you asked me about Koreans. We're getting up to this. When you go to this is why there's a lot of racism, and I wouldn't say racism, but it's anger in black communities about Koreans. They come and set up businesses in the black community and disrespect the very community that they set the businesses up in. When they go and set up a business in a white community, they don't disrespect the white people in that community. They will go set up something in the black community. They take the dollars out of the black community, even though their customers are majority black, and then they go invest it in their own. And then they talk down to, mishandle, and mistreat the very customers that support their business. If I came to you, if you were buying stuff from me, and every time you came to my store, I watched you like a hawk. I talk down to you. I implement things that I know would be against you. Man, I'm not supporting these people no more. You're crazy as hell. Well, why can't black people feel that way? When you set your businesses up specific, everybody, it's not just Koreans, it's the Arabs, everybody. Because black people are the memory gland for people, foreign people that come into America. Because for so long, they've been held outside. This is why I started this show. Listen, for so long, black people have been held outside of the geopolitical situations that's going on. They didn't understand the geopolitics because nobody taught them. The policies of America, listen, and I have to say these things. We know that the highest law of the land is the Constitution, right? The highest law. And you hear people talking about we got to get back to the Constitution. But that very same Constitution recognizes the Chinese and the Korean as human beings. The only people that it does not recognize as a full human being is black people. The people who sweated night in and day out in the fields for free for 400 years. And you're telling me they don't have the right to be angry? Because if we're talking about America being the land of the home of the free, right? And it's supposed to be equal, you can't tell me that there's equality in America. When you own all the land, you never put me in a position to get it. You never taught me the economics. You never taught me how to be civil after teaching me for 400 years how to be chattel. You never taught me that. I have to learn through trial and error. Because I've been put behind everybody else for 400 years. The only law that matters is the Constitution. Everybody tells you it's what the whole country is based on. And in that Constitution, black people are considered 3/5 of a human being. And some people say, well, that's old. It's still in the highest law of the land. That means it is recognized by every government and state government, regardless of what they say publicly. Because if it wasn't, it would be removed. That's what I'm talking about. So when you ask me about blacks being mad and rage, it's anger that you come in my community. You don't bring anything of value, but you take value out. And while you're doing it, you're disrespecting me. I've not received the respect that is due to me, and you come in here, we support you, and then you do me like that. I have the right to be angry, because if I did it to you, you would feel the same way. You understand? I hope I agree. So listen, and I have to address these issues. These are hot button issues, which I welcome. I mean, man, listen to me good. I have to, even if we don't agree on everything, we are civil enough on this platform to be agreeable to disagree. But I'm telling you this, like, listen, I was looking at something, and I'm gonna address this real quick because this goes hand in hand with something. Years ago, I did a program, and this guy called in, right? And I was talking to two other black guys on it, and we were talking about ways of trying to educate and empower the black community and to get them thinking more than the club and rap music, because this is what was imposed upon them through the information blackout, through the war on drugs, and through all of this other stuff. Do you know that black people had the highest marriage rate in America prior to them implementing the policies that they openly stated, go look in our Library of Congress, were used to destroy black family? And then when the family was destroyed, guess what they did? They go back and say, black people are having children out of wedlock. I'm like, am I the only person on the planet reading this stuff? Am I the only person on the planet taking time to analyze this stuff? On the one hand, you have a stated goal and policy to break up black families. And when they're broken up, you start complaining that they are single parent homes. How is that? Just like I was telling you all, and I'm going to come back to what I was saying, but just like I was telling you all about, I hear Colonel McGregor, and I'm not knocking at him because I like a lot of his views, when he talks about violence and the rule of law, and this, we need to go do this, and we need to go to this. what these pundits forget, and I know they are out of touch with certain portions of society. That's why I'm here. You can't scream about violence when it was violence that put those people in those positions. What you are looking at is blowback from the policies of your violence. Do you understand? Look, to give you an example, we'll go to Russia for a second. Russia is fighting this war in Ukraine. Russia had no plans of fighting this war in Ukraine. Russia didn't want to balkanize Ukraine. If they wanted that, they could have done that before the breakup of the Soviet Union. They had no plans to. But now we're looking at the balkanization of Ukraine. Is it Russia's fault? No. But America keeps telling you it's Russia's fault, even though all of the writings, and we have it on recordings about how America wanted to use Ukraine against Russia. What Russia is doing is not what I would say an action. What Russia is doing is a reaction to the action taken by the West. But that gets lost in translation with most people. So I was talking to these guys, and let me tell you, I was talking to these black guys, and we were thinking about trying to do something that could empower black people to start seeing more of the world, to start recognizing, because you got to understand, for 400 years, they didn't have that right. Do you know that black people were only allowed to read the Bible about 100 years ago? You know that? For all of you, the Christians here, did you know that it was under the death penalty in the United States? That if a black person was caught reading or learning to read, and especially learning to read the Bible, they would be killed? Did you go read it in the Library of Congress? Go do it. See if I'm lying to you. So now look, as we were talking, this white guy called in, right? And we were very cordial to him. We were answering questions. Well, I know I was answering questions too. And I'll never forget, it was Ahmed was one of the guys I was talking with, and Abu Petrie, he's a professor, I believe, at North Carolina State, I believe. Abu Petrie. He's the author of about 8 or 9, maybe even 10 books. Okay, Abu Petrie. This guy came in, and as we were being cordial and we were trying to converse, because you can't build nationhood, you can't build prosperity disparaging other people. You can't not do that. So after a while, he was trying to be slick, and what he said was this: as we put out the facts, he says, well, why are black kids or black people constantly failing or the lowest in math? And I was telling him it's about priorities and it's about environment. And he was like, well, 1 and 1 will always be 2. I say that on here all the time too, right? And he says, I don't care what, there's no justification because they're always the lowest in math and this and that. I say it's a whole bunch of perception. I don't understand. I say, okay, I'll tell you what perception is. Okay. And when I told him that, he was at a loss for words, and I'm going to share with you all what I told him. I said, so let's look at what you said when you talked about the math. And I'm in agreement with you. 1 and 1 will always be 2. 3 and 3 will always be 6. 10 and 10 will always be 20. It'll never be 20 billion. It will always be 20. All right. Now, I say, but it's your perception because you've had a leg up and you've had this, so that you're so far. We're trying to catch up. Remember, the rug was pulled from under us for 400 years. So we're doing our best to catch up with what we have. We don't have all of the resources that are available to you. And so we are trying to do the best we can with what we have. So listen to this. I said, let's go back to environment. Environment shapes a person just as much as your DNA, according to science. Go look this up if you think I'm lying. If you think what I'm saying is an embellishment or a lie, go look it up. I'll tell you, you can go to the Science Journal. Or Science Daily. And go look and see if I'm lying to you. And so as I talked to them, I said, listen, when I say perception, we are perceiving that the test scores, the test scores are made specifically for a particular people. Whether it's true or not, that's the perception, because it was like that. I said, now, he said, well, I still don't understand. I said, okay, let's look at this. I'm going to show you how much perception means. I said, when you look at the founding fathers, well, first of all, before I talk about the founding fathers, I said, how do you view Charles Manson? Oh, he was a murderer. He was a savage. I said, okay. How do you view Hitler? One of the worst human beings ever. I said, why? He killed 6 million Jews. I said, Hitler himself he had the time to kill 6 million people. He said, no, but he ordered it. I said, okay, I'll leave you with that. How do you feel about people that are habitual rapists? They should be killed. How do you feel about people who will break into your house and steal and kill from you and kill you without a second thought? They should be killed. I said, okay, now that's your perception. I said, now let's look at this. Now, that's what you see. Now, let me ask you a question. How do you look at George Washington? He was the founding father, one of the founding fathers and the first president. Actually, George Washington was not the first president. Because if you go and do your research, there were other presidents of the Continental Congress and before him. Okay, so most people don't know that, but hey, I digress from that point. I think it was four or eight presidents prior to George Washington of the Continental Congress, which was the representative of the people in the United States at the time. So there were presidents before George. George just gets the credit. Okay, go look this up and see if I'm lying to you all. Okay, now, how do you feel about? He was a magnificent man. I said, how do you feel about Jackson? How do you feel about this person? He's okay. I said, now, you feel that they're heroes and you look up to them and their pictures are on the walls of the White House, right? I said, yes. He said, I don't see where this is going. I said, just be patient. Let me talk to you for a minute. We're talking about perception. I said, now, when it was not George Washington, when it was not Andrew Jackson, when it was not your founding fathers, and it was George Manson and Hitler, they should be killed. But you look at the people who've done the same thing to black people as heroes. Perception. But the black people and the descendants of the black people who are from those people who were robbed and killed, don't look at them the same way. Perception. We're in the same, we're in different environments, and we're looking at the same set of facts, and yet we're coming to two different conclusions. Because no matter what you say, George Washington owned slaves. No matter what you say, George Washington had a black child. No matter what you say, George Washington was brutal to black people during slavery. No matter what you say, the rest of them, most of them did the same thing. But in your eyes, because they're your founding fathers, they get a pass. Hitler doesn't. Perception. Perception. But if this was done today in a mass shooting, they would be held responsible. But it was done then to an entire people, and they get a pass. Perception. The same list of facts. Two different environments, looking at the same thing, coming out with two different views. And you know what the guy, he's like, I see what you're saying. This is what I'm telling you. We never do that. We never analyze this stuff. When we hold something dear to us, we just hold it dear and it's without reproach. When in reality, we're supposed to examine everything that is presented to us. Everything. You understand? And that's why I constantly tell you, look up what I'm saying to see if I'm lying to you or if I'm embellishing anything, because I want you to hold me account to what I'm doing too. You understand? So, Mr. Mike, you got to understand, you had 100 million people killed in the Middle Passage from Africa to the United States. That's not genocide. 100 million. Even if we corroborate and say the Jews had 6 million killed, 6 million course 100 million. Then, from arriving here, they lied and said that the first slaves came in 1619, when in reality, if you go to the Library of Congress, the first slaves came to the shores of America in 1555, April 1st, April Fool's Day. And they hid the 64 years. This is not me writing this. These are the founding people of America writing this. That 64 years was taken away, and those were the 64 years where they turned black people from black people into niggers and negroes. Prior to that, there was no such thing as a Negro or a nigger. I don't have the right to be mad about that. Stop this, man. Stop it. But this is what I'm saying. Even with perception, they want that to happen. They want us to divide. But see, when inconvenience truth comes, sometimes you got to just analyze and just take it and say, you know what, you're right about that. You're right about that. And none of you have heard me ever advocate violence against anybody. None of you. But what I won't do is hold my tongue to the truth, even if it may alienate supporters or whatever, because the truth it has to stand over everything. It has to, because without the truth, what is life? If you come to tell me, hey, look, your sister murdered this person over here. I love my sister dearly, right? But if she did it, she did it. Just because she's my sister don't mean it didn't happen. You understand? We've got to get out of these little funky feelings and deal with reality. That's why I'm here. I'm going to put everything in, by the will of God, I'm going to put everything in place. I'm going to tell the truth. If it alienates you, if the truth hurt, hey, then so be it. Like Rashid always said, my co-host who comes whenever he's off, like he says, you know which dog got hit when you threw the rock over the gate, because the dog that got hit is the one that's barking the loudest. And that's true. I bear witness to that. Let's see. Yeah, persevere groups. Let me put this up here. At Southside Mike, most groups, including blacks, Indians, Hispanics, consume mainstream news, especially the white working class in the UK. Man, listen to that. Whoa. And this is the problem, because you're continually digesting this propaganda. And what they are hoping for is that you cannot stomach the truth if the truth condemns you. Because, a lot of people, they'll accept everything until you start pointing the finger at them of their guilt or something that they've done. And they know that is the weak spot of mostly everybody. So they try to use that to divide and conquer. As long as me and you are arguing over this, even if I present facts to you and I going back and forth over this because you don't agree with the facts. Not me, because I didn't make this up. This is history. But if you don't agree with the facts, you and I going back and forth, right? When they're watching this in the halls of power, they're laughing. Oh, yeah. We got them off of their square. We got them off of the subject. So we don't have to worry about them right now, because you can see that they're still divided. So we can implement these plans of global dominance, even if it means thermonuclear war. And who loses in thermonuclear war? Everybody. These people are sociopaths. They're psychotic. They're crazy as hell. There is no way you can say there's any sound judgment in the leadership of the Western world, except I believe. Now I gotta put an asterisk by that, because I do believe that Orban in Hungary may be of sound mind, and I think if I'm not mistaken, that new leader is it the Czech Republic? It used to be Czechoslovakia. And I think it's the Czech Republic. A new guy, I might be wrong with the name, but I think it's two of them in the West that may have some sound judgment. Two. There's dozens of Western countries. Two. And these two are small countries with little weight. So where does that lead us? If the main proponents of war, economic terrorism, and covert terrorism refuse to acknowledge the truth and refuse to even listen to the people in their own camp that is trying to put some kind of sanity in their head, what does this mean to us, and where does it leave the entirety of the world? We're on the path to war. We're on the path to war. Because the Western world sees everything that they've gotten slipping away from them. And now they want to make China the boogeyman. See, now listen to me. I just talked to you about Koreans. I just talked to you about the founding fathers. I just talked to you about Asians. Because I just talked to you about a whole group of people. And look at me going right back, telling you about China. Now, if I was racist, why would I be telling you the truth about Russia? If I was racist, why would I be telling you the truth about China? My mind would be so engulfed with trying to defend this at all costs. And the truth would become a casualty of it. But no, I stand on my square. I don't run from questions. I'm going to answer you directly. I'm going to address the issue, and we're going to come to a solution. That's how I get down. The more you listen, the more you join us, the more you'll know it. God is good every day. And he ain't good just when you got money. He's good when you're broke. He's good when you're smiling. He's good when you're crying. He's good when everything is going right. And he's definitely good when everything is going wrong. So it's my job to enlighten people of the greatness of God by giving you the necessary history, the necessary geopolitical knowledge, the necessary economic knowledge, and the political knowledge that is needed so that you can look at everything yourself, put it on the table, put it on a scale of facts and weigh it, then come to a sound and right conclusion. I'm not trying to make the conclusion for you. I'm trying to tell you how to get to a conclusion by offering you the same information that God has blessed me with. That's what I'm doing. You know? Let's see. Perseverance says, I'm sorry, everybody. This thing is acting up here. You see me keep looking to the side. I'm looking because it's doing like this. My chat is like shaking, doing like this. Maybe it's more class issue than anything else used to divide and conquer. Let me tell you something. More so than class. Well, you can say class when you look at it, but the people who have been in power, who've established this system, are the best beneficiaries of the system. And of course, if you benefit from a thing, you want that thing to endure. And you want to exterminate any rival or any challenger to that system, because a new system could remove you from the positions of power and your place of wealth and influence. So what you see is wealth being passed on from generation to generation, from the people who were the most heinous and vicious of all, passing it down through their lineage, and the people who are coming up through that lineage are enacting policies to try to prevent anybody from challenging or rivaling the system that they are the greatest beneficiaries in. To hell be with you, to hell be with me. As long as they prosper, that's what's in their mind. And they don't care if you black as an ace of spades. Well, they do care. But now they've come to a conclusion. Well, hell, we've sucked almost all the blood out of black people. We're sucking it out of everybody. We got to suck it out of white people. And this is where we're looking at. Because look at this. You see what happened on Jan 6, right? With the uprising. That's what they call it, the uprising. When black people do that, they call it a riot. You see what I'm saying? Negative connotations. All right. Now, were they right in protesting? Yes, they were. Was the thing that they protested for was stolen? Absolutely. Everybody knew it was. You know, everybody knew it was. But were they right? Even if this is the thing I say. People say, well, you know, in Jan 6, there were FBI agents, there were police that allowed this to happen and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you're right about that. But let's look at it right. Even though that took place, And even though you had government instigators and government people, they didn't make the people go in there and take those laptops. They didn't make them go in there and seize those offices. They only allowed them in there, right? What if I opened up my door and it was a person up in my house that you wanted to kill? And I opened up my door and you went in there and killed that person. I didn't make you kill that person. All I did was open up my door, right? You had it in you to do that. Now, am I condemning JNC? I don't care about it because I'm apolitical. I'm telling you that had that been a black crowd, that would have been deemed as rioting and ungratefulness. But everybody defends the actions and say that it was patriotic. And I remember in Oregon, no, it was Washington, the state of Washington. I was covering some news when they were protesting the police brutality. This was some years ago. And they were covering, they were talking about the rioting and stuff, and the police were everywhere. And then I noticed this, because I was hip to this by somebody who was white. See, I don't mind giving credit where credit is due. I don't care if you're white or black, brown. If you give me the truth, I'm going to acknowledge the truth. Okay, told me to pay attention to something, so I started looking at what was going on. And as the people were protesting, there was no violence. It was a whole bunch of black people meeting, okay, and they were protesting police brutality and the killing of somebody. All right, listen to me good. I want you to understand what I'm saying, because this goes back to the Jan 6. And there were trucks pulling up at the protest, and provocateurs and instigators got out the truck. They were covered head to toe in masks, gloves, long sleeves thing, and they were dropping off pallets of bricks. Listen to me good out there. Google this if you think online. Pallets of bricks. And some of the instigators started throwing the bricks through the windows. And they started instigating the people to go in the stores and riot or take what was in there. Fox News started reporting that these were thugs. I'm talking about the people who were seen on camera. Most people who were coming out of the stores had masks on and long arms. I'm not going to tell you the person who told me this because they are very famous and they are journalists. I'm not going to tell you who this person is, okay? But they were white. And they hit me to a lot of information. And he told me that these were white people that worked directly for the government. That were, because you saw the black people, they didn't have on the masks and stuff. They were just, but the people who pulled up, they had masks on, they had glasses on, they had long arms, and the ones that were dropping off the bricks and throwing them. They were instigating it, and Fox News refused to report because it was a Fox News truck right there. They refused to report that there were trucks pulling up with bricks, pallets of bricks on them, right? And then these people who pulled up started throwing bricks, and then they started amping up the crowd. And so Fox News started reporting these thugs. And when they was reported, they turned the cameras from the people who had the long stuff on to the black people. And this made its way around the U.S. And had my white colleague not told me this, he said, look at this. He said, look closely. And I did. I would not have had a second thought because I was preoccupied with other things at the time. All right? So this is not me making up something. This is something that a very influential journalist told me. And he said they were doing this for a reason. And I'm not going to tell you what the reason was. Maybe later I'll tell you the reason. But anyway, it was to promote a certain agenda. Now, when we look at see if that agenda was promoted, when the protests take place across the country for the police brutality, police killings of people, the first thing comes up is a record of the victim. not of the police, but of the victim, right? Now, when we look at the Jan 6, nobody history comes up except that they did this, and this, but none of their private history comes up. And it is called patriotic. Even though the people, say for instance, let's just say the people that went in that building were black people. That was a store. But you had Jan 6 going to the halls of Congress, the government. And that's patriotic. But the people that went in the stores were thugs and they were rioting. You see? Perception. This is what I'm telling you. And this is what they use all the time. Perception. Man, I'm telling you, listen. I didn't mean Southside Mike got me on it, but what I'm telling you all is we've got to grow mentally. We got to mature up here. And we got to deal with facts, even sometimes when they're unpleasant. We have to acknowledge the facts. We have to look at the facts as they are so that we can apply them so that some of the wrong things that happen can never happen again. And we can move on from there and build something. That's what I'm saying to everybody. Because right now, right here, America is falling. I call her Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty set up on that political, economic, and geopolitical wall. And she had a great fall. And all of the wars that she's trying to initiate and all of the sanctions she's trying to implement will never put Humpty Dumpty back together again. We're moving on. Something new is coming in. Something better is on the horizon. Something more fair, more just. And you see nations after nations lining up for that because they have been in a system that has been unjust, unfair, racist, fascist, and arrogant since colonial times. Do you believe that a racist society, a racist government, and I'm not just specifically talking about America, I'm just putting this out, a greedy society, a greedy government, a bloodshedding society, bloodshedding government can go on in perpetuity? Remember, I'm asking you on the back of asking you this. If you believe that there is a God, and we know that there is, and if you believe that he is a just and fair God, and he is, and if you believe that he will rain judgment on those who delighted in making war, as your scriptures tell you, why do you believe America is the exception to that rule? And if you believe that America is exceptional to that rule, then you've bought into the Kool-Aid. You've drunk a lot of the Kool-Aid. Because what you're saying in words without saying is that America is more powerful than God. That America can nullify the rules of the universe and the divine guidelines of God. She can kill, she can maim, she can bomb, she can rob, she can occupy, because she does it in the name of democracy. Of course, we wouldn't be doing it maliciously, but it's in the name of human rights and democracy. So you believe that. What you're saying that you have more faith in these insane leaders than you do of the God who created the heavens and the earth. You believe that these insane people can overcome the power of the Creator, because you can't go on doing wrong, robbing and killing and warring on people and expect for that to be in perpetuity if there's a God of heaven and God of righteousness and a God of justice. Because justice demands and science demands that for every action, there must be an equal or greater reaction. And when we're looking at the fall of America and the collapse of the Western world, that's left out. What we're looking at when we see the fall of America and the collapse of the Western world, what you're looking at is the blowback effect of American and Western policies for centuries. This didn't happen because of the policy against Russia. That's a byproduct of what's going on. This didn't happen because of a bomb or allowed Israel to bomb the consulate in Syria. This didn't happen because China is going to war with America. It happens because of the injustice that has been meted out to so many people around the world. Justice and righteousness, it has to prevail. And like in science, when there is an unnatural entity that has entered the natural realm, it causes the natural thing to get sick. And the natural thing must muster up enough energy to rid itself of the unnatural, or else both the natural and the unnatural die. We're watching the dying of the unnatural world, unnatural order. An unnatural order. Look, every time you turn on your TV, somebody's dying. Every time you turn around, there's a robbery. Every time you turn around, there's something going on with war and pillaging. This cannot go on in perpetuity if there is a God of righteousness. Justice must be exact. And the justice that God uses comes right out of you. If you greedy, he's going to choke you with your greed. If you arrogant, he's going to choke you with your arrogance. If you're arrogant, if you love war, that'll be your downfall. All of these foreign wars are depleting the coffers of the American empire. If America had not gone to war for most of her history, her coffers would be full. But God, he took the restrictions off of her and allowed her to hang herself with her own rope. That's what you're saying. Most people don't want to agree with this. I tell you, if you don't, prove me wrong. If you can't prove me wrong, get on the right side. And let's build something that's permanent. Not something that's artificial, not something that is pillaging from place to place, not something that is exploitive, but something that is tangible, that is beneficial to the whole of man. And once we start recognizing that, we can see each other in a different light. You're not an animal. I'm not an animal. You're not beneath me. I'm not beneath you. We are under God's mighty power. Listen, thank you. It's been a wonderful time. I love each and every one of you who love truth. Thank each and every one of you for joining me. Hit the like button, subscribe, tell others about it, because we're going to continue to do this. And remember, there's no question that's off limit with me. God has really blessed me. My mom tells me that I got this from my pops. And I remember seeing my pops as a kid, when I was a little kid. My pops would be at the foot of the bed, and I subconsciously, I didn't know that I do the same thing. He would lay across the bed, be at the foot of the bed, and he would be reading from 5 and 6 books and making notes. And guess what? I've been doing that for decades now. And my mom said, you got that from you. And all of my brothers and sisters read a lot too. My wife reads a lot. And all of my children are smarter than I am. My sister often says, my oldest sister tells me, she'll call me messing with me. She'll say, you know, I just thought about something. You're the dumbest person in your house. She said, my nephews and nieces are so intelligent, so smart, and all of them speak proper English. I'm a country boy, but they speak proper grammar, proper English. One of my children, one of my kids is in the chat right now. Shout out to Wispy Blue Bricks GPX. That's one of the screen names. I love my children, but I agree with my sister. I agree with my mother. My children are way smarter than I am, because it was a duty that me and my wife put on our children to learn. As a matter of fact, let me tell you this before I go. You may not believe this, but anybody that knows us knows this is the truth. Every one of my children taught themselves how to read. Every one of them. My son, Khalif, he was reading. I remember one day, and this shows you the environment. This is what I'm talking about environment. He sees me and his mother conversing constantly and reading. So one day we're in the house, and my son is reading the commercials off the TV. This is 20 years ago. And I look at my wife and say, Nicole, oh, that's my son right there. That's my son right there. I said, Nicole, did you teach him that? She was like, no. I was like, maybe he has that as through memorization. So he was reading the commercials. He wasn't even I think he was like 16 months old or something like that. Something like that. He was like either 14 or 16 months old, something like that. And so after the commercials went off, I paused it. I turned the TV off for a minute. I told Nicole, I said, listen, I want to see if he knows what he's saying or if this is just him memorizing the commercials. So I got the newspaper and I put the newspaper down and I started asking him and he just started reading the newspaper. And my wife and I looked and our mouths dropped open and we're like, oh my God. I immediately called my mom, this guy's reading this. Can you believe this? And then every one of my children have done that. And they read constantly like me, which is passed down by my father. I love reading. I love reading. I love reading. I love learning. I learned something today from some of you. I learn every time I'm around you, every time we're conversing. You're not the only ones that learn. I'm feeding off of you guys just like you're feeding off of me. So don't think for one instance that I'm not learning. I'm learning how to be a better man, a better son, a better brother, a better uncle, a better father, a better husband, a better friend, and a better man. And I hope that you who look will take that to heart. And don't judge me by my faults. Judge me by my passion and my love for truth. On that note, know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth, but know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that the divine supreme being has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things. And guess what? Hey, Kabari, regardless of what you say, that's my baby, one of my baby boys. Hey, I'm Nana's baby boy. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces. My son is going to kill me for this one. I'm out of here. Peace, everybody.